progressive news coverage, concentrating on local events using 16 and 8mm sound on film and silent cameras. 8mm news coverage was pioneered in Canada by CHAN-TV. The experience of news director Phil Barter and newscasters like Andy Marquis ensure Channel 8 viewers the most comprehensive television news coverage in Vancouver. The informality of weatherman Cam Cathcart is enhanced by the use of a reverse scan weatherboard, used exclusively by CHAN-TV in the Vancouver market.
Let's face it, it's going to rain in Vancouver this winter. As a matter of fact, it's going to rain in Vancouver.
So if there's an item that you'd like to know more about, please call us at Channel 8 TV News.
This is the News Hour for Wednesday, October 1st. Here is Tony Parsons.
Good evening. BC teachers heard the word on wages today. The word was no.
The News Hour with Tony Parsons.
Good evening.
BC's finest hour. The News Hour with Tony Parsons.
Good evening. International.
The new News Hour with Jim Hart.
Coming along on the second half.
In Ottawa, it was the day after the blizzard. He said he'd walked in the snow at night and decided. In Mackenzie, an angry picket confrontation. The Special Edition News Hour with Tony Parsons.
Pierre Trudeau.
Good evening. In 2 hours, they'll begin to count the ballots as Vancouver voters turn out in big numbers to decide who should run BC's largest city. More than 39,000 people beat it down to BC Place Stadium last night. It was a thriller of a show, but the Michael Jackson ticket scalpers got scalped. The performance was spectacular. The crowd was enthusiastically polite. But outside, the scalpers went as low as $10 for a $40 ticket.
The Weekend News Hour with Pamela Martin.
In tonight's news, 200 construction jobs may be saved as the BC government prepares to step in. A voyage to outer space tonight. A faraway planet is for sale. And in sports, an historic first for the Redskins as they walk off with the Super Bowl.
News Hour Final. The Weekend Edition with Pamela Martin.
Young Tabitha will spend Christmas with her mother by order of the family court. And a feature report on the medical adventures of Sarah, who almost wasn't here for Christmas.
News Hour Final with John Gibbs substituting for Robert Malcolm.
The News Hour with Tony Parsons. Good evening. Striking nurses in Alberta are punished by the courts.
With Doriana Temelo substituting for Robert Malcolm.
Good evening and Merry Christmas. And it will be a slightly drier Christmas.
This is a test. Each camera can be programmed to take 799 different shots. And this is our new set.
The Morning News Hour with Jennifer Mather.
Good morning. We know it's early, but welcome to the first edition of BCTV's Morning News.
The new News Hour with Deborah Hope.
Good afternoon. Coming up, can you believe some doctors are...
News Hour with Doriana Temelo, substituting for Deborah Hope.
Good afternoon. How could it happen here in Vancouver?
More fires ravage Southern California, but this time they're only a small part of the disaster. And has the LA quake brought BC closer to the big one?
The News Hour with Tony Parsons.
News Hour Final with Jennifer Lowe, substituting for Lyndon Souls.
Good evening. And
The new News Hour with Deborah Hope.
Good afternoon. Coming up, Christy Yamaguchi. She's in Vancouver.
From the British Columbia Television Newsroom, the early news with Pamela Martin.
Good afternoon. It's a day of new beginnings here on the early news and
Day 27, and one last chance for the leaders to sway some of those undecided voters. A major train derailment near Whistler and a major near miss for the environment. Can Canada do anything about a foreign ship accused of killing 3 stowaways?
The News Hour with Tony Parsons. Live from BCTV, the new News Hour.
good afternoon. Deborah Hope is away. Canada Customs authorities are holding.
Live from BCTV, here are today's top stories. Beginning at 5 on the early news.
Sucking into the turkey, BC's biggest city feeds its hungry.
And on Canada Tonight at 5:30.
The people Santa missed spending Christmas on the streets.
Then at 6 on the News Hour.
Home for the holidays, 2 BC girls are back from the United States.
Right now, the early news.
Good afternoon and Merry Christmas. We begin tonight with
Live from BCTV.
and the boom in Buddhism.
Right now, the News Hour with Jennifer Mather. Live from BCTV, here are tonight's top stories.
Defying the law, pro-lifers stage a protest. After 10 years, a Vancouver arsonist remains on the loose. And all that jazz, the Grizzlies game decided in the last second.
Right now, News Hour Final with me, Jung Lee.
Good evening. Protesters are planning to spend a rainy night.
Smoking. Right, that's why.
And a violent carjacking injures 2 people in Adamsport.
Right now, the morning news with Lynn Collier.
Good morning, it's 5:30 on Thursday morning. Welcome.
Live from BCTV. The morning news with Lynn Collier.
Our top story, a possible case of bioterrorism in Victoria.
Right now, the new News Hour with Deborah Hope.
Deb was promoted.
Another high-profile figure goes down in the APEC affair. BC residents honored in Ottawa for going above and beyond.
Right now, the early news with Pamela Martin.
Several BC residents were officially hailed as heroes today in Ottawa when they received.
Live from BCTV, here are tonight's top stories.
No death penalty. The Supreme Court rules 2 Canadians can't be executed. Victory against biker gangs. 4 men are convicted under a new law.
Right now, Canada Tonight with Bill Good.
Good evening. No matter what crime they commit.
The nation's top stories tonight.
The family of a murdered 5-year-old speak publicly for the first time. They all fall down. The last remnants of Sydney Steel implode on cue.
Right now, Canada Tonight.
Good evening.
Live from BCTV, here are tonight's top stories.
The police and the Premier. The Mounties search Glenn Clark's home. Here we go again. Another storm rakes southwestern BC. Teenagers pledging celibacy and putting it in writing.
Right now, the News Hour with Tony Parsons.
Good evening. It's been an astounding day in BC's halls of power, and it all began with this unprecedented image captured.
Live from BCTV, here are tonight's top stories.
BC smoking ban gets extinguished by the court. What now? With his family support payments twice his income, he ended it all. And the morning after pill soon sold over the counter in BC.
Right now, the News Hour with Tony Parsons. Live from BCTV, here are tonight's top stories.
We're mere minutes away from going global and big changes at BCTV.
Right now, News Hour Final with Ted Chernecki.
It is the biggest change in a television market in this country's history, and it's happening here in BC.
Live on Global, BCTV News top stories.
Hostage taking over, a peaceful end to a standoff at a women's prison in Burnaby. And it's noisy, but it's a big moneymaker. Indy roars into the local economy.
Now, the Saturday Morning News.
Good morning and welcome to the new BCTV Saturday Morning News on Global. This is the beginning of a new era for us at this station as we are now part of the Global Television Network.
Live on Global, BCTV News top stories.
Rescue on a glacier. 4 BC climbers fall into a deep crevasse. Harvest time for BC's biggest cash crop. Unless police have their way, and back to school, the pressure to achieve and to cheat.
Now, the News Hour with Tony Parsons.
Good evening. A daring and complicated rescue is winding down tonight at Mount Baker, just south of Vancouver.
Now, News Hour Final with Jill Kropp.
Good evening. There is some breaking news tonight. Police may have the big break they've been desperately looking for in the case of dozens of missing women.
Thanks for being with us for the morning news this Friday, April the 4th.
Our top stories today. BC's first SARS clinic opens its doors in Vancouver today.
And U.S. troops gain control of Baghdad's airport.
What's the weather going to be like this weekend, Zach?
Well, a little unsettled today. We still have showers to deal with, but sunny breaks are also in the forecast. A high of 10, a bit drier tomorrow. We'll tell you all about it in 10 minutes.
And most of that slush and snow has melted down in the South Surrey White Rock area, though it might be a little bit slippery for you still. We'll have all the details for you coming up.
Live on Global, the BCTV Morning News.
Anyone on the Lower Mainland who suspects that he or she may have been exposed.
Live on Global, the News Hour with Tony Parsons.
We've declared a state of emergency for the Thompson-Nicola Regional District for the fire that's particularly affecting McClure and Barrier and the communities around it.
Live on Global, BCTV News top stories.
In her own words, a young girl who says she was abducted for the sex trade. The husband and wife in their 90s, hurt in a home invasion. And the U.S. on high alert on the eve of a terrible anniversary.
Now, the News Hour with Tony Parsons.
Live on Global, the new News Hour's top story.
A winter blast, BC's interior receives a huge dump of snow. Off the hook, Ontario's government is found not responsible for a massive blackout. And multiple allegations of child molestation. An arrest warrant is issued for Michael Jackson.
And now the new News Hour with Randy Neal.
Good afternoon, and winter has finally arrived.
Live on Global, the News Hour's top stories.
Shots fired at the Peace Arch as California fugitives make a run for the BC border. Minority Report, how long will the new Conservative government last? And new information on that deadly weekend plane crash on Vancouver Island.
And now, the News Hour with Tony Parsons.
Live on Global, News Hour Finals top story.
Shocking discovery, a drug tunnel into the U.S. is discovered near a BC border crossing. A motorcycle officer hit while rushing to an accident scene. His days on patrol may be over. And should daylight saving time be extended, a proposal in the States could affect us.
And now, News Hour Final with Jill Kropp.
Good evening. U.S. drug enforcement agents have arrested.
Today on the Morning News.
An horrific holiday for a Nanaimo couple vacationing in Mexico.
And a medical marijuana activist forced to return to the U.S. from Canada is freed from jail.
Highs today getting up to 10 degrees. There's clouds and showers around this morning. Should dry a little bit for this afternoon, but getting set for more wet as early as tonight. More in 10 minutes.
And we should see volume easing off in the next half an hour. We'll be back with all the details in 10 minutes.
Live from Global, British Columbia, the Morning News with Lynn Collier and Steve Darling.
Well, with spring break just around the corner in Nanaimo, mother has a warning for anyone who's bound for Mexico.
Well, 3 wildfires are burning in the Okanagan Valley. Thousands of people have been forced to flee from their homes.
You're looking at live shots from the fire scene. We'll bring you a live report from Kelowna as well in just a few minutes, Mark.
Absolutely. Good morning again with clear sunny weather for all of southern BC, it looks like, for the next several days. Possibly a few clouds clipping us by midweek, but hot and sunny is how I see it. I'll fine-tune the Kelowna area and the entire province in just a few minutes. Amy Bell, over to you.
No reports of any stalls or accidents, but we do have some volume hot spots. And of course, we have the closures on some highways because of the fires. I'll have a look at all of that and more in just a few minutes.
Live from Global, British Columbia, the Morning News. Here are Lynn Collier and Steve Darling.
Well, West Kelowna residents are hopeful that weather conditions will work in their favor today.
Now from Global, British Columbia, the Saturday Morning News with Sophie Louie.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. And
Today on the new News Hour.
BC's so-called Prince of Pot turns himself in. Mark Emery headed to the U.S. to serve prison time. BC unrolls its plan for the seasonal flu shot and what to do with the vaccine for H1N1. And a man is recovering from a group beating in Stanley Park. Was it another hate crime?
Live from Global, British Columbia, the new News Hour with Randy Neal.
Good afternoon. Health officials announcing today BC's...
Live from Global, British Columbia, the News Hour. Here is Chris Galis.
Good evening. Our top...
Live from Global, British Columbia, the News Hour.
it has been an all-out assault from the air and ground.
Tonight on the News Hour.
A fire chief says he's been fired for trying to keep booze out of the fire hall. Charges against a North Van hockey trainer to be stayed. His lone accuser has suddenly died. And a thief steals a kettle from the Salvation Army at a time when donations are already down.
Live from Global British Columbia, the News Hour. Here's Tony Parsons.
Good evening, and we begin with a late developing story tonight. The now former fire chief in Squamish.
Tonight on News Final.
Country ablaze. More than 10,000 people spend a second night evacuated from their homes. Helping Hands. What can you do to help the thousands of people who have fled the flames? And nature's fury. Residents pick up the pieces after hurricane-force winds pummel the prairies.
Live from Global British Columbia, News Final with Ann Drua.
Good evening and welcome to a
Tonight on News Final.
The torch goes to Surrey. Thousands welcome the flame as Daniel Agali lights the cauldron. Room at the inn. Not a lot of room, mind you, but you can still find last-minute hotel deals in Vancouver. And shocking arrest. A high-ranking military figure facing serious charges tonight.
Live from Global British Columbia, News Final.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. It seems there is but one topic of conversation left on the Lower Mainland. The Olympic torch has arrived in Metro Vancouver, and for most people, it's giving a real sense that the Games are just days away.
Live from Global British Columbia, the Saturday Morning News.
Good morning and thanks for joining us. It's 9:28. Well, there may be a new security threat in New York City.
Live from Global British Columbia, the noon news hour with Sophie Louis.
Tonight on the News Hour.
The teenage killers who stalked and killed Kimberly Proctor, what made them think they'd be able to get away with it? A mother guilty of covering up a deadly hit and run. If she was doing it for her son, why haven't his charges come up in court? And the speech heard round the province. Did Premier Gordon Campbell give enough to save his government?
Live from Global British Columbia, the News Hour with Chris Galis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The fallout from a chilling murder case on Vancouver Island.
Tonight on the News Hour. Live from Global British Columbia, the News Hour with Deborah Hope.
Good evening. There's a call tonight.
Tonight on the News Hour.
Amanda Todd's family makes an appeal to stop the hateful messages being posted online after her tragic death.
Live from Global British Columbia, the News Hour with Ann Drua.
Good evening, and we begin with more fallout on the tragic passing of Amanda Todd. Police say tips have been flooding in connection with
Randy Neal.
News Hour Final with Randy Neal.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. BCTV.
Tonight on News Hour Final.
Have rural communities turned the corner on doctor shortages? A Chilliwack woman is forced to prove she's still alive after a mix-up in Ottawa. And sharing the surf, a group of Vancouver Island surfers have a wild encounter caught on video.
Live from Global British Columbia, News Hour Final with Randy Neal.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. The shortage of doctors.
And good morning. Thanks very much for joining us. And there's the breaks Mark has been promising us. A great view from the Sheriff Wall Center. And he's looking pretty good this morning so far.
Our top stories for you on this Tuesday. Dramatic rescue. 5 children and 2 adults pulled from the icy water near Valdez Island.
And changing waterfront, New Westminster gets ready for new development.
All right, yeah, Steve, your picture a moment ago was looking west. This is looking north, of course, and lots of blue sky in that direction. I'm really happy about today. It's going to be a pretty good one, I think, overall. I'll explain the weekend outlook, which changes quite a bit. That's coming up in weather in a few minutes. Caitlin?
Thank you, Mark. Well, at least the weather's cooperating because traffic sure isn't. Still dealing with heavy delays because of a broken down vehicle on Highway 1. I'll look at the backup and your alternate routes coming in traffic.
Live from Global BC, the morning news with Sophie Louie and Steve Darling.
Well, good morning. 7 people, including 5 children, are recovering after their boat overturned in the Strait of Georgia.
A search is on for the suspects who set off fireworks outside of this Vancouver house last night, doing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage. And as the Leviathan 2 is raised, the captain of the ship that capsized addressing the loved ones of those lost in the tragedy for the first time.
Live from Global BC, the early news with Robin Stickley.
Good afternoon to you on this Friday. Thanks very much for joining us. Police and fire investigators searching for 3 suspects.
Up in smoke, successful American cannabis campaigns fuel the 420 rally supporting the legalization of pot. Bostonians try to return to normal life as officials wait to interrogate the suspect captured in connection with Monday's attack. And a dream come true for fantasy fans. The stars of Fan Expo attract a colorful crowd at Vancouver's Convention Centre.
Live from Global BC, the News Hour. Here's Ann Drewa.
Good evening. Less than a week into the provincial election campaign, the Liberals are calling for
Victoria police scandal.
Well, it's extremely rare to have an investigation into the conduct of a chief constable to begin with.
The shocking allegations forcing the city's top cop to step aside.
Surrey 6 setback. He might have not pulled the trigger, but he is responsible.
The notorious mass murder and the surprising punishment for one of the key players.
And cheetah on the loose.
Oh, I was feeling sorry for it. This is not Africa.
Hoping for a speedy end to the search for this big cat in Creston.
Live from Global BC, the News Hour with Chris Galis and Sophie Louie.
Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. We'll get to those stories in just a moment, but first, it was a heart-stopping scene in the Okanagan.
Feeling the heat, actress Jennifer Beals responds to Global's exclusive video of her leaving a dog in a hot car. Left at the curb, a 100-year-old passenger wants to know why a local bus driver refused to help her. And living on the edge, some lucky Vancouver police officers recount their close encounter with rock and roll royalty.
Live from Global BC, News Hour Final with Ann Drewa.
Good evening. It's a story that's making international headlines. Last night we showed you the exclusive.
Tonight on Global News at 11.
Searching for solutions.
I'm just appalled that Canada is not doing more.
Vancouverites learn how they can help the Syrian refugee crisis.
And a new look for late night. Stephen Colbert debuts The Late Show on Global.
This is Global News at 11 with Sophie Louie and Jay Durant.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Gregor Robertson is adding his voice to the growing chorus of outrage over the Syrian refugee crisis.
Good morning. It is great to have you with us on this holiday Monday, May the 23rd, wherever you are. Thank you very much for choosing us to wake up with you this morning. Our top stories today: fire races through a townhouse complex on Vancouver Island, and how the flames could not snuff out the fun at one birthday party in Surrey. That is another story that we have coming up for you. There you go, that's the one, in just a couple of minutes.
Good morning. We're underneath some cloud cover, even a slight chance to see a few isolated showers. Breaks as we get in towards the afternoon. More sunshine in our long-range forecast. I'll show you when and how warm. All coming up very shortly. Over to you, Caitlin, and good morning.
Good morning, Yvonne. Good morning, everybody. So holiday morning traffic, what that means for traffic on the roads as well as at the borders and ferries coming up.
You're watching Global BC. This is Global News Morning.
Good morning. So 3 people are recovering in hospital this morning as police in Surrey.
Good morning. It is Saturday, May 21st. Thanks for being with us. Our top stories for you today. An elderly couple forced out of their Coquitlam home overnight by a 2-alarm fire. Investigators are at the scene. And more people opting to stay in BC this Victoria Day long weekend. We'll tell you what's keeping them at home. Wes Lawang with us from Global Okanagan today.
Good morning, everybody. And this is a beautiful picture of Terrace. That is our small town feature today. What you need to know in weather? Well, the northern parts of British Columbia, mainly sunny for the north coast. Few clouds, though, in the BC Peace. Southern British Columbia, there is a shower risk. I'll have all your weather details coming up shortly. Chanel.
Good morning, everyone. It's semi-final Saturday at the World Championships. Canada taking on the Americans a little bit later this morning. We'll tell you which team the winner of that game will play in the gold medal game. Plus, the West Kelowna Warriors are 1 win away from the RBC Cup final. All that coming up a little bit later in sports.
You're watching Global BC. This is Global News Morning.
Thanks for being with us on this Saturday morning.
You're watching Global News Morning.
All hands on deck in Langley as crews battle flames at a recycling plant. Good morning and thank you for joining us. The man charged in the murder of 13-year-old Marissa Shen will make his first court appearance on.
It is Saturday, October 13th. Our top stories today. Detained in Cuba, the family of a Metro Vancouver police officer facing sexual assault allegations speaks out. Plus,
this was my retirement. I'm not going to be able to retire.
Another BC landlord's rental home is trashed by tenants, leaving him holding the bag and the bill.
You're watching Global BC. This is Global News Morning.
Good morning. I'm Colleen Christie. Thanks for joining us. The family of one of 2 BC police officers.
You're watching Global News Morning.
You have to prove the intent to kill. It's built right into the nature of the charge.
Acquitted of attempted murder, a BC man who fired a shot hitting his pregnant ex-girlfriend has been found not guilty. Good morning and thank you for joining us. Thousands of bus drivers, C-bus operators and maintenance workers casting their vote today on a new contract. When we'll know the results. And our province finally coming in line with the rest of Canada as the BC government officially eliminates medical services premiums.
You're watching Global News at noon on Global BC.
Good afternoon. I'm Sonia Sunger. Thanks for joining us.
Are you going to make it tonight?
Not through this.
Tonight, BC highway nightmare. A massive dump of snow leaves motorists stranded. Plus, firefighters battle a blaze at a plywood plant in Chilliwack, trying to save another structure next door. And why one Star Wars fan apparently went over to the dark side at a screening last night.
You're watching Global BC. This is Global News at 5.
Good afternoon. I'm Colleen Christie. We start with some breaking news. A huge fire is burning at a Windsor plywood location in Chilliwack.
It is a positive step. There's so much more to do.
A major boost for Surrey schools. Why some say it's still not enough.
Emergency response.
The police guys say go inside directly, now.
Bizarre circumstances prompt police to bring out the big guns.
And stepping over the line.
Okay, we had a pretty late night last night.
Canadian travelers in hot water for disrespecting Yellowstone Park.
You're watching Global BC. This is Global News Hour at 6.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Relief is finally coming to help.
going to make it tonight?
Not to this.
Winter blast, the treacherous conditions just as holiday travelers hit the road. A Star Wars fan shows his dark side.
Turn your phones off!
What set off this temper tantrum at the Vancouver premiere?
We spotted the fugitives.
And passenger under the influence.
It sets a very dangerous precedent for people who are trying to do the right thing.
Why a woman was slapped with a roadside suspension even though she wasn't behind the wheel.
You're watching Global BC. This is Global News Hour at 6.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Chris is off tonight. Road conditions across BC are deteriorating.
The search for a small plane with 2 people on board that's gone missing en route from Edmonton to Chilliwack. Plus,
Everything's gone. We're just absolutely devastated.
a daycare in Maple Ridge, just one of the victims of a storm that tore through the area. And
basically, they shouldn't have been up there, period.
North Shore Rescue says 2 unprepared hikers are lucky to be alive tonight.
You're watching Global BC. This is Global News at 11.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Colleen Christie. Sonia is off tonight. A search